今年7月，由外交部邀请，首度以原民议题为主题来台湾参访的加拿大国会议员代表团，针对族语保存、经济赋权和转型正义等议题，与原民相关单位进行交流，也实际走访部落与族人互动。特别的是，这次访团成员涵盖加拿大3个原住民族群 （First Nations、Inuit 以及Métis），相当具有代表性。这一集的义大 Specials 主题特写，义大团队非常荣幸邀请到其中2位议员接受专访，来跟我们一起聊聊这次访台的心得与看见。And today we have 2 special guests from the delegation, and they are going to share with us about the journey in Taiwan. So welcome, MP and senators.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And first, I would like to ask Senator Brian Francis, as the first delegation with a focus on indigenous issues such as language, culture, economy, and transitional justice. And can you briefly share with us about the journey in Taiwan?
Well, I can say we had an amazing journey, which started on Monday. We had a jam-packed week of being totally immersed in Taiwan indigenous culture. We got a taste of the languages. We went yesterday, for example, to a community where we had youth singing and dancing. And it was so nice to see that they're so proud of their culture, as our indigenous youth in Canada are. And I mentioned to them yesterday, as a former chief, that I always empowered our youth to be the best they could be, and they're the leaders of today, not tomorrow. So that's just one example. I saw similarities in the regalia, we call it, or the costumes, and the headdress. As a chief, I wore a similar headdress. So it was just, it was so nice and comforting and relaxing. It was almost like coming home to cousins.
Mm-hmm. And how about MP Blake? What impressed you the most during the journey?
What impressed me the most was certainly the pride, the immense joy that so many Indigenous people have when expressing their culture here, yes. When needing to face up to the really serious challenges that are presented to Indigenous people here. I often find back home we do that by joy. We express that right, which is a fundamental right of all peoples, to be happy, to be joyful, and to be who you truly are. And what I've witnessed in this trip has been a little bit of that, something that we pride ourselves in North America as indigenous nations reclaiming our culture, language, and heritage. We see a lot of those similarities here. Senator Brian Francis mentioned the youth. They're certainly so proud, whether it's in their current studies at universities here or whether it's practicing and learning their languages. You can see their eyes light up and just how excited they are to share with the world who they are.
And you mentioned about the similarities. Senator, do you found some similarities in like indigenous peoples are facing like challenge or, yeah?
I think we would be fair to say there's some similar issues here as there are First Nations in Canada as well. Loss of land, maybe a loss of economic opportunities, education, lack of education. Those are similar issues that we have in Canada as well. Access to affordable housing. So I see them as being very similar.
Because you not only visit indigenous organizations, but you also visit local tribes and villages, right? So MP Blake, do you found some similarities?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest similarities that are facing peoples, not just in Canada and North America, but right across the globe, is the serious threat of climate change. We heard about the struggle that elders are facing here in Taiwan in trying to realize the changing weather patterns, the immense difficulty it is to maintain one's cultural connection to land when that land and the surrounding area is changing so rapidly. We see those issues in Canada as far as the far Arctic, where we see the changing of the climate there drastically impacting our relatives in the north, to areas like my jurisdiction in Alberta, where historic wildfires are taking huge swaths of land that are threatening the very life and stability that Indigenous people like my people rely on. And so it's something that I feel not just Indigenous people of Taiwan are raising the alarm bells about, but it's something that I think we as people right across the globe must unite and find a positive path forward so that we can ensure that all peoples can get through what is a very difficult challenge.
Yes, I think that is important. And MP Blake, you were the first openly two-spirit person ever elected into the House of Commons, and you are committed to promoting gender equality for the LGBTQ community. And how is the situation within Indigenous community in Canada?
The situation within Indigenous communities in Canada is a very generational one. Throughout Canada's past, we've seen consequential governments enact policies that have largely harmed Indigenous communities' ability to organize our societies and to recognize our societies as fair and equal members of it. And when we deprive our communities of being able to truly recognize the beauty of being who we truly are as gifts of our Creator, it's something that I think we've witnessed here in Taiwan as well, that we've seen the immense power of being oneself and being true to what that means can really have on young people in particular. In Canada, we have, in some ways, suicide crisis amongst young people. And when we don't support young people in their identity, in their desire to truly be who they are, we see those kinds of harms realized and those very painful truths of losing a loved one because of our rejection of who they are becoming a reality. And so what we've done in North America, what we've done in my nation in particular, is find ways to accept them and rebuild what is a tradition of making sure that they're included in our societies and that they take their rightful place in our dances, in our music, and largely in our politics.
Mm-hmm. So we have to, be very supportive for them, right?
Yes, it's a fundamental piece of democracy.
Yes, and after the establishment of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in Canada, I'm very curious about, has it served the purpose of promoting justice for Indigenous peoples, Senator?
Well, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in Canada came into effect in 2021. I was proud enough to sponsor it when it came to the Senate as an Indigenous senator, and it's really the result of hard work by the survivors that had this day come to be. And it's a day in Canada now as a somber reflection of the atrocities that were committed against our children and in the residential school era, the Indian Day School era, of which I was a part of for 8 years. I went to an Indian Day School, and it's looked at as a somber day, a day of atonement, a day of reflection, and how do we move forward together as a country. And we've made some strides. We have a long way to go. I always say that reconciliation is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's going to take time, and it's going to take hard work. And those that want to step up to the plate and do the hard work will be with us as non-Indigenous allies, as Indigenous allies. And we need all Canadians to work with us, and we believe that will happen as time goes on.
How do you look at this, MP Blake?
Well, I think what's most important is knowing that elders, in particular, have suffered greatly. And they've suffered largely a kind of burden of having to survive a terrible injustice while also trying to maintain the goals of ensuring their children know who they are. Those two fundamental challenges are ones worth recognizing amongst our elders. And we need to do more to ensure that those who have suffered these injustices are truly recognized for their contributions and for the real survival of our cultures and our languages. If we don't have those things, we suffer a generational impact where young people are lost and they don't know who they are and they don't know where to go. There's many truths that are required in the path of reconciliation, and we need that truth now more than ever. I've always said that we need truth before we need reconciliation, and that truth comes from our elders and their sharing of that experience. And we have to have the courage as a society, a global society, to realize that these truths must be incorporated in the very real history and narrative we tell each other.
Yes, and we also have similar National Day. We have Indigenous Peoples Day in August 1st. And in order to commemorating the official inclusion of the term Indigenous peoples into the Constitution in 1994. And in 2016, our former President Tsai Ing-wen also chose this day to represent the government in apologizing to Taiwan's indigenous peoples for the injustice indigenous peoples have suffered. And can you say some words or share your thoughts to the indigenous peoples in Taiwan? Senator?
I would say that, as in Canada, the Indigenous Day in Taiwan would be a day of reflection, a day of remembering what happened negatively to the Indigenous peoples, and how do we continue to move forward. And I would also say that reconciliation is not just one day a year, it's every day. And it's everybody that should be a part of reconciliation. And it was really nice that the president at the time, acknowledged that and apologized. And it's now, what do we do to move forward?
Maybe Blake?
Taiwan's indigenous people have been a remarkable testament of the strength of generations of those who've suffered under brutal and at times very difficult policies that have attempted to assimilate or take away the fundamental beauty, the fundamental rights to joy, and the fundamental ability to share with the world who you are. And those pains need to be recognized. It's part of truth. And I think if we don't acknowledge that truth, then we suffer from having to repeat those pains again.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Brian Francis and MP Blake, for continue to fight for indigenous rights. And it also let us know that we are not alone on the road to reconciliation. And I hope this journey can bring you a strength and also strengthen the relationship between Taiwan and Canada and through indigenous affairs. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the people of Taiwan for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.